and introducing our brilliant keynote speaker. We're really lucky to have a longer intervention from Nandini today, given the breadth of this topic. And we'll have 2 rounds of breakout groups, as we already started breakout groups. But yeah, we'll have one during Nandini's intervention and the other one after the Q&A. And we're going to be recording the whole meeting, but we won't include the breakout group bits as part of the recording when we eventually publish on the website. So I thought I could just briefly set the scene. I have a clicker actually. Let me try. Okay. There we go. So yeah, I just thought I could briefly set the scene with some general stats about AI to kind of start to trace the picture of what we're dealing with. So more than 1 in 3 UK adults are using AI chatbots for mental health or wellbeing support. In 2027, global AI training and use are projected to account for 4.2 to 6.6 billion cubic meters of water withdrawal. Since 2010, the Business and Human Rights Resource Centre has tracked 834 alleged abuses against workers, Indigenous peoples, local communities and ecosystems as part of mining critical minerals necessary for AI to run. And I'm not going to read through all of them, but there's more out there. And what I hope these statistics kind of begin to convey for us and for our work is that how the fight for digital justice can be seen as being just as ubiquitous to gender equality work as, say, the fights for climate justice or economic justice. As this particular theme and lens of analysis might be new to many of us, including myself and the other my colleagues in the Secretariat, it's going to be really interesting to hear from Nandini how to better understand the same power struggles and oppressions we're familiar with, and how they're also fundamental to the digital space and what a feminist alternative to this might look like. So I'll now hand over to Nandini, our keynote speaker. She's the Deputy Director and Fellow Research and Policy Engagement at IT for Change. IT for Change is an NGO based in India whose mission is to work towards digital justice in the global south, with a particular focus on how the political economy of digital relations can centre the south. The organisation's work has a deep grounding in Southern feminist literature and thought, viewing gender justice and digital justice as 2 sides of the same coin. In Nandini's work, she largely focuses on research and policy advocacy in the domains of digital rights and development and the political economy of women's rights in the information society. She is part of the organisation's advocacy efforts around the 2030 development agenda on the issues of data for development and digital technologies, as well as gender justice. So yeah, Nandini, please take it away.
Hi, I hope you can all hear me. Please let me know if you can't. I'm trying to speak very loudly and have amplified my volume to the extent possible. Firstly, I wanted to thank everybody for the opportunity to meet with the Gender and Development Network and have an opportunity to share IT for Change's work. We are a small organization based in Bangalore, India, and our work is grounded a lot in Southern feminist thinking and frameworks. So, without much ado, I will just pull up my. Yeah, could I have screen share access, please?
Tech-based, no.
There's something wrong with the speakers.
Yes, yeah. We're trying to make Nandini's face, yeah. Can't see. It's just you click on her. I'm trying to right click. I think you need to remove the spotlight. Sorry, guys. Okay, there you go. One more down, up, down. Oh, there. Yeah. No, but now you take chance to her. It's okay. Down. There, yeah. In back. You should be able to now, Nandini. Hopefully.
It's coding is going to.
Yeah, one second. I think you can all see my slides, right? Right now.
Yes.
Yeah. And let me know if you can't hear me. So, okay. So just to get into this, so for the discussion today, I have tried to bring some reflections on what learnings we have from our work on what does it mean to think with a feminist lens about the digital paradigm today? And is it possible to think of pathways outside digital colonialism that we all inhabit? So now I just go first to the outline. So for the input today, it's organized in mainly four parts. So first, because we are a room full of colleagues interested in looking at the intersections of gender and development, I'll spend a brief time looking at what's the intersectionality approach adopted in this input, and then I'll discuss what we have learned at IT for Change about the prevailing characteristics of the digital colonial development paradigm that we find ourselves locked in. And then go on to talk about, from a gender lens, this peculiar gendered accumulation by disposition dynamic that's the hallmark that sustains digital colonialism. And finally, when we look at regenerative AI, what does it mean to look at like decolonizing the digital paradigm for a feminist future? It's easy to present the problem, but still, ways out are always difficult. And this is something I would like to think through with all of you and learn from your reflections and inputs. So when we look at the intersectionality lens of this input, there are two premises that I start with. So the first is that when you look at the struggle for gender justice, it's kind of not separable from the project of decolonizing development. And as Geeta Sen and Karen Groen, Southern feminists, talk about in their landmark book from 1984, while it's true that gender subordination has universal elements, we know that feminism is not based on a rigid concept of universality. And equality for women is not possible within existing economic, political, and cultural processes. A political economy that reserves resources, power, and control for small groups of people, particularly in the capitalist paradigm we inhabit. The second point I would like to start with is that in our feminist politics, it's important to reject false dichotomies between identity and class. And as the queer feminist movement has shown us, queerness is not a floating, purely identitarian category. And if you're talking about eliminating queerness as an axis of oppression, the idea is to recognize that our liberation and our struggles for liberations in the queer movement are linked to the liberation from capitalism. And this is the lens that is important to see when we bring frames of intersectionality. So, with this, I think the case is also made on why we must pay attention to digital colonialism as a problem that those of us in the space of gender and development must agree with. This is a word that is thrown around a lot in many policy and public debate spaces today. And when we look at digital colonialism, this is a term that has gained a lot of traction in the scholarship and in popular discourse since 2018, particularly. It's known by many other names: tech colonialism, algorithmic colonialism, digital neocoloniality, and so on. And this is a very useful conceptual handle, we feel, to describe the global domination of social, political, economic, and cultural spheres by a handful of transnational corporations that control foundational digital infrastructure. As the scholar and technology practitioner, feminist, Abeba Birhani writes in 2025, there is a similarity and difference between traditional colonialism and digital colonialism. Traditional colonialism was often spearheaded by political and government forces, but in digital colonialism, we find ourselves driven by corporate tech monopolies, and both of them are fuzzy in the sense that they reinforce each other. And when we look at dimensions of digital colonialism, there are two things that are particularly striking: economic power, where the corporations are more powerful than states themselves. And when we look at political power, a new bipolar world emerging, where, of course, we recognize that China is a state in the global south and US empire has attempted to dominate even China in the past. But right now, there is a different race for control of the AI order, and I would just submit that it is very wrong to look at this as a digital Cold War, because unlike the Cold War, where there was a battle between two different political economic systems, there's actually a conflict between enduring imperial power, which of course we can say is now breaking from within in the current moment, and a rising imperial power within a world capitalist system. And China's alliance capitalism model is also somewhat of a compromise with global capitalism. So when we look at the dimensions of digital colonialism from this very beautiful and comprehensive review of the existing literature, I have shared the resource also on the link and happy to share that below. We see that there is a new phase of primitive accumulation. There is the extraction of human lives and life worlds, where our lives and social worlds and labor and natural resources are all being converted into data. There are new relationships of dependency as digital infrastructures start mediating everything from public services to marketplace to even our most intimate social relations and even spaces of emotional affect and intimacy. There's also cultural imperialism, which, like we have seen, especially in the generative AI moment. AI is an epistemic technology. So the holders of AI technology decide the lens about which knowledge about the world is cast. So in the future, are we going to see the world through US or Chinese epistemic viewpoints? Is dataism the world's new religion where everything is seen through an order of data? These are questions to think about. We also see that though there is a lot of structural violence, this often gets hidden and the debate gets confused through a wider narrative of benevolence that masks this. Now I come to the point on what is the gendered accumulation by disposition dynamic, and do you want me to pause?
No,
Yeah.
Nandini, is there any way you can make your slides any bigger? I think if you went on presentation,
Yeah,
I think that's the biggest we can go. Thank you.
yeah, thanks. Yeah. So now to go back to this and talk about when we bring a gender dynamic to this problem, what is it that we want to talk about in digital colonialism? And from the work at IT for Change, what I want to stress is the accumulation by disposition dynamic. Now, what does this mean? So, firstly, to look at the global digital economy through a gender lens, I would really recommend the work of the scholar Laura Mann, especially her paper on the gendered creep of neoclassical economics through digitization. We actually see that when digitalization started changing the world about 20 years ago, this was prior to AI, when the internet was on the scene, we see a slow and gradual process through which developing countries have been locked into low value segments of the global economy. And unlike in the preceding era, when at least to some countries, foreign direct investment, FDI, brought a mix of high value and low value tasks, this is not happening in digitalization. We see that what is instead happening is that high value tasks at both the production end and the final marketing end, the value from this continues to be captured by developed countries, countries with advanced technologies, and it is the parts of the digital value chain with low value added, whether it be mining or generation of the hardware components, activities like that, or let us say becoming a consumer or market for digital services and products. The South has really been co opted into the global order like that. And there is a phenomenon that you may have heard of, which is popularly known as the smile curve, where the low value activities, which are at the lowest end of this U, they tend to be concentrated in global South countries, and the high value items are in the global North. And of course, in China as well, in the way digital economy gets like divided now. So when you look at this, what happens to the question of gender in the economy? We see that there is first a feminization. This we saw in the wave of BPOs and outsourcing and in the initial step of digitalization. After AI has started coming in, those statistics say that in developing countries, currently as we speak, only 10% have actually started putting in AI into production activities. The writing is on the wall, and evidence and forecast suggest that the use of automation in production will lead to a reshoring of manufacturing that disproportionately impacts women. And even in cognitive tasks like the IT services that were outsourced, women would be first affected. When you look at automation, there are three waves, right? There is the automation of computational tasks and repeatable tasks being automated, which we are already seeing. When it comes to the automation of cognitive tasks like Claude Copilot with software engineers, which happens in male dominated sectors, it affects the workers a little bit differently. So, cross gender solidarity in this struggle against automation may also tend to be difficult, is what Laura Mann points out in her work. And this is important to keep in mind. Now, against this backdrop, I also want to cast a spotlight that when value is getting extracted against this unequal template, there are processes of exclusion, exploitation, and what the geographer Saskia Sassen has termed expulsion happening in the global economy. And these are very gendered processes. I bring in some insights from our research at IT for Change on these three processes. So, when you look at gender based exclusion in the marketplace of extractive algorithms, I would like to give two case study exemplars from our work in India, in one instance, where we studied Indian micro, small, and medium enterprises. And in the other instance, we did a global mapping of the challenges that women workers face through virtual consultations with union representatives, lawyers, and civil society in Asia Pacific, Africa, Latin America, and European Union. And from both these research studies, I want to share some points. So, when it comes to the labor market and platform algorithms, we see that algorithmic pricing systems or algorithmic wage matching and job matching systems, they are gender blind, and this starts to disproportionately affect women. To give an example, women riders on Uber in the Asia Pacific region, they observed that when you look at surge pricing phenomenon, women workers are unable to work in these time slots, and they end up actually working more hours to compensate for lost earnings. And this is a big concern. I also recognize that we may have critiques about the fairness of search pricing itself and the larger problems of algorithmic discrimination and exploitation by the work management system. But here, what we are talking about is primarily the fact that in the design, when there is gender blindness, structural discrimination and structural injustice gets accentuated again. That's the limited purpose of this exemplar. Similarly, we find in our research into India's e-commerce marketplace and medium, small micro enterprises run by women trying to tie up with Amazon or Flipkart or other e-commerce platforms, the problem that when businesses tie up, the algorithmic evaluation criteria that is used for the promotion programs or featuring on buy box and things like that, they don't account for the reality of women-led enterprises. Like if you have to be a Amazon Prime seller, you have to meet some criteria which are unable to be met by most women-led MSMEs, which tend to be small businesses with low output levels, limited working capital, and very little capacity to bear the inventory and customer service overheads that services like Prime demand. And many women MSMEs felt the platforms therefore don't work on them. And this is something that is clearly happening here. We also see that this continued form of gender-based exploitation, whereas feminists, we have long been attentive to the compact between capitalism and the patriarchal household, where what feminist theorists have previously discussed as processes of housewifization, where the surplus labor of women is sometimes selectively, re- lent to the marketplace without it affecting their care work rules. This is being recast under digital capitalism through a more fluid, unstable, and collective configuration of labor divisions. So we found in our primary research in India two interesting or variant ways in which this happens. In the space of online freelance work, like Amazon Mechanical Turk, we found that most women workers were underemployed, meaning women with engineering degrees and who, because of their care work burdens, India has one of the highest gender disparities in the amount of care work being done by men and women in the world, as a recent ILO study found, where women disproportionately shoulder care work burdens. And I'm sure you have also read about our falling rates of women's formal workforce participation. The women engineers, after marriage and childbirth, they leave the workforce and they are taking up Amazon Mechanical Turk jobs in order to earn some additional money while also maintaining whatever they need to do at home. And we find that there's an entire narrative of respectable femininity that suits everybody in this arrangement, and this is able to be mobilized by the platform in a structural way. When it comes to workers who are in the platform economy in a different class demographic, like workers performing informal urban services that are platformizing, like beauty work or food delivery, where India also has women food delivery riders, there are different ways of labor flexibilization where the household gender division of labor slightly shifts. We see that men and women sometimes share work, but on the whole, the rhythm of the households becomes gigified, where there's always this idea that at any moment a call for work might come, and there's an overall dynamic of pliability and precarity that get enacted. And this is what we found in our life story interviews with some workers. I'm also happy to share these papers with you for your comments and viewpoints later. Now, finally, coming to gendered expulsions, this is the idea of irrelevance, where as digital capitalism marches on, some people, enterprises, and places will be rendered completely irrelevant to the core social and economic order of our times. And I think here, uh, we could see a very great example or a very stark example in the way data centers dispossess indigenous communities. And we are also seeing that as communities in the global north protest, the companies are trying to reshore data centers to the global south. And anecdotal evidence of this is increasingly becoming stronger. And as the autonomous Marxist feminist Sylvia Federici said long ago, that when communal natural resources are destroyed, this affects women much more than men, because women are the primary subjects of reproductive work, and they are most penalized by their privatization and committed to their defense. We see this dynamic emerging, and we do not know what happens. Similarly, certain places are rendered completely irrelevant for the network, and places are cast aside. And this we see in the statistics of rising material deprivation, where it's not a coincidence that the two decades of digital economy development have also been decades where inequality has worsened at all levels, and the labor share has declined in the global value generated. So, this is not a coincidence, but a structural feature of how the digital economy is developing on older fractures in the neocolonial economic order. That's what we believe at IT for Change. And now I just come to the final part, which is on, okay, usually we are, I think, used to critique and seeing how things are going wrong. We may want to see how else to do things and how we could make the things right. And it's clear that in order to claim this paradigm for a feminist future, it's not enough to just look at small models or micro initiatives, but we may need to transform the political economy of the digital as a whole. So, before we proceed, and I would share my thoughts from IT for Change later, but before that, I'm curious and eager to learn from you first. So, as discussed with Erica, if we could have a small group exercise where it's quite simple, it's just about discussing, in your view, in the small group, what is the feminist AI paradigm about? Complete the sentence with three features that you think are essential. I will just pause here so that Erica can guide us on how to take this forward. Yeah.
Thanks, Nandini.
But now, just to share from IT for Change as well, you may all be aware that just last month in India, there was this AI summit that was like the talk of the town, and all these things were happening. In the lead up to the AI summit, we organized a series of civil society meetings, bringing together feminist activists and other civil society organizations, digital rights groups, and trade unions and cooperatives in order to envision a different deal for the AI economy. And we were looking at a regenerative AI order, particularly drawing upon traditions of feminist economics to see what else do we want to do. Uh, Post this call, I'm also happy to share this material for circulation with all of you, where our idea is that over 2 days of conversations, we had developed a particular kind of campaign or a imagination, a manifesto like document, and we are trying to take it as a people's demand into the global dialogue on AI governance that is coming up, and then build outward from there. So this is a vision document. It's not at the level of very, very specific proposals, but I would also like to talk about some of the proposals that we have within each of this. And this document is it has four prongs. So the first prong is looking at meaningful and dignified work at all levels in the AI value chain. And the starting point is that it's not enough to just look at post facto correction for addressing labor harm. But right from the beginning, looking at whether we can ensure fair work all across the value chain of AI, because right now most of the work of content moderation or data annotation are performed by Global South. A lot of these workers are also women. We've also heard of instances where, like in the Sama source case, where workers unionize and they want to file for better conditions, the company just shifts its operations elsewhere. But if we had a different global standard on fair work foundations, how would that work differently? And the question here also is that can we imagine different ways of economic organizing where platform cooperatives or other models are performing data work that may be needed in the AI value chain? And a question that's not like usually put front and center is certain AI use cases which rest on very exploitative content moderation systems, for instance. Is this the way, for instance, we need to build that AI? For example, the entire social media architecture. Is the mainstream model at all the way to go, or do we need to rethink it from the get go? Countries like the UK are also looking at it in the context of online violence and, I mean, a whole range of rights concerns. And we also have recent court cases for the types of algorithmic design that is harmful. And these harmful models also rest on very precarious labor in value chains. And this is something we may want to change from the get-go and engaging in spaces such as looking at due diligence or protections of labor all across through audits and things like that in these subcontracted chains. Maybe some actions which may need a lot of collective work between organizations in the South and North. And this is one area we are interested in as well, and we work through our networks. Next, when it comes to diversified economies, we know that in the current way AI is building, there is a tendency to build the AI stack in ways that encourage monopolistic concentration and economic domination. We all know about OpenAI, NVIDIA, Nexus, and what would happen to the American economy if any part of that delicate system comes down, the rest will go down like dominoes or a pack of cards. So, if we don't want these closed chains controlled by a few, what would it mean to look at open and public technology standards all across the AI stack differently? Could we think of other models like a distributed CERN for AI that UNCTAD has been talking about? What sorts of cooperation could happen? And what is the productive dynamic between digital public infrastructures and people-led common initiatives that we need? A different form of industrial policy, for instance. So these are some areas where we all felt a lot of workers needed. And uh, thirdly, when you look at AI as epistemic technology, what is AI doing to the idea of pluralistic and vibrant knowledge societies? There is a risk that dominant AI models will reflect the viewpoints of only dominant regimes, the actors, and their political economy behind them. So, what happens to the range of epistemic visions that are shared by communities who may not be at the forefront of building AI? And the other problem we see here is how intellectual property regimes enable the cannibalization of local and traditional knowledge, and they violate a host of epistemic rights and collective knowledge claims. And this is something that needs to change. And we also feel that the uh, push for sui generis rights in data and AI may be a little misleading because what we may instead want to fight for is to talk about data as a social commons over which no actor can claim permanent ownership over. And these debates have also happened in the UK with the NHS and health data. And more recently, they are happening in India with our digital health ecosystem and the data stack that India is building on digital health and digital agriculture as well. So these debates are happening in multiple parts of the world and need our collective attention. Last but not the least, as one of my colleagues in the room on groups already mentioned, when we look at planetary flourishing and the urgency that climate change currently demands from all of us, uh, we urgently need to build AI very differently, where we may need to rethink, for instance, when you look at foundational AI like large language models, it may not be practical or appropriate for every country to think they will build these massive models burning huge amounts of energy and water. It may be important to have a different way through which, when these models get built or are built, we are able to do work on top of these models where, at least at the inference layer, we use small models which less energy intensive requirements, or we build local AI with very limited compute requirements and look at how a different data AI paradigm can emerge, and a lot of work to be done on thinking about small AI that is suitable for and sustainable for the environment, and also challenging small AI washing that some big tech companies are into. And this needs us to make a lot of bridges between with the progressive technologist community as well. Last but not the least, I will come to one point that I think is very important. It's not on these slides. We know from research and from experience that the mere act of building a social and solidarity economy approach or a commons based thinking in a technology creation does not automatically become feminist or automatically deliver on gender equality. Early studies of Wikipedia have shown this. There's this very famous study on free as in sexist, like which many of you may have come across. There are also studies looking at platform cooperatives and even experiments in Barcelona with cooperative accelerators, where certain gendered assumptions do not go away just because the choices are about social and solidarity economy approaches. So, infusing a feminist lens, a robust sense of intersectionality, which is attentive to all axes of oppression, where, like in the beginning, I had mentioned that in our intersectionality, we must not create a dichotomy between class and identity, gendered identity. That also means we cannot overprivilege class in our analytical responses. That is also equally true. So, how do we build from there? At IT for Change, we have also initiated a project where, with other organizations in South and Southeast Asia, we are looking at feminist AI prototypes for different models or use cases, if one may call it. We are also looking at policy approaches that could support the flowering of such innovation, and would be happy to engage with the folks in the gender and development community about this. So please feel free to get in touch with us. I'll just pause here for your thoughts and your comments.
Thank you so much, Nandini. If we could just give her a big round of applause. So I do have one question from someone who had signed up to this meeting before, and we did ask everyone on sign up if you had questions. So I'll ask that one as my moderator's privilege. But then I'll hand over to you guys for any Q&A that you might have for Nandini. So the first question we had is it ethical for international NGOs to jump on the AI bandwagon when we know of the negative impact it has on women's rights, particularly in the South, in the global South? And I'll just let you respond to that one, and then maybe we can do kind of grouped questions from the audience.
I think that, I was thinking about this question because you had also shared this in advance. And it really is about context, because I feel any AI for social good partnership can only be assessed in a specificity in terms of answering the question of who is building for whom, under what conditions, and what financing relationships and what technology relationships are involved, and is there dependency for the community that is being affected by this? Are there direct and indirect harms and discrimination? So I feel if we are taking these questions to the collaboration we are going into about whose agenda we are serving and what are the power relations in that project, by looking at this, then we could uh, have a suitable answer.
Thanks so much, Nandini. Anyone else? Any questions?
Hi, thank you. That was really very informative. Just a couple of questions. I wondered what AI washing meant. And then secondly, I was trying to figure out what your feminist AI prototype looks like. What shape is it? Just trying to get a sense. You can just say a little bit more about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. And Ceci, did you want to unmute yourself and ask the question online?
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, and thank you for the presentation, Nandini. My question was more about how we don't discuss whether we do need AI and what do we need AI for and where is the need for AI coming from. Because I feel like sometimes it's just a continuation of the same economic logic of having to increase productivity, and we're not asking what kind of jobs we want to replace with AI. Why are we not discussing replacing CEO jobs with AI? But we're talking about artists, we're talking about manual labor, in some cases. And I think that also needs to be discussed. Why are people, as was mentioned at the beginning, people are using AI to access therapy, but that's because there is no services that are provided for free. So I think we may need to switch our point of view as well to kind of see how we can build a really feminist approach to this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ceci. I'll hand back over to you, Nandini. Did you catch them all?
Yes, I think so. Yeah, I was trying to write furiously. I hope I got it right. Yeah, so I'll go in the order of the questions. Um, so, yeah, when I was talking about AI washing, there were two aspects I was trying to talk about. One was about open washing, where sometimes big tech companies pretend that their entire AI stack is built on open source standards, but the fine print that they are talking about open source models where only part of the model is available to you to use, but you cannot really see what the technologists call weights or the scrutinizable part of the design, which shows how the model works. So the accountability and scrutinizable potential is not there in this AI. And they also don't talk about the fine print of dependencies where this model would need particular chips and particular platforms for coding and particular application servers to serve these applications. That was one kind of AI washing. The other kind of AI washing, I think it's a long-standing problem which most feminists are familiar with, which is about ethics washing, where companies pretend to do voluntary safety commitments. Like the Bletchley Summit is a great example of that. In the Bletchley AI Summit, there was a lot of hue and cry about voluntary safety and companies signing the pledge. And many of these companies who signed the pledge, where they signed the pledge in Seoul, taking forward the Bletchley agenda into the next summit, they were actually found guilty of the most rights violating practices, including supporting the economy of genocide that UN Special Rapporteur Francisca Albanese called out in her report. So these were the two instances I wanted to refer to. Now, in IT for Change, when we are talking about feminist AI prototype, what qualifies, right? So we are in the process of, inviting applications for prototypes that qualify. And for us, in the criteria, there are three things that really matter. And these are the values of context, care, and co-implication. where by context, we are talking about the point that Cecilia was also talking about, that are you a AI solution in search of a problem, which is a very common problem even in the software industry, or did your AI initiative come from a grounded analysis of something that you are hoping to make better for the community, where efficiency is about the community and it's not about like what is driving the innovators' speculative capitalism idea. When it comes to care, it's about the idea that across the AI lifecycle, from data collection to coding to algorithm design to testing and to finally rolling the project out and post-market evaluation, you have a robust ethical framework which is attentive not just to narrow concerns of privacy and consent, but individual harms across the gamut of human rights and also collective and social harms focus and ways of addressing that. And when we look at co-implication, the recognition that ecological costs are not some externality, but the fact that the way we inhabit a natural and social world are something nobody can wish away. And how are you factoring that in? We are curious to know how many applications we will get in and what they will think of, like, how to work through these standards or requirements. And 3 4 months later, we might be in a better position to see how this exactly panned out. This work has been done before, not in the Asia Pacific, but in other regions. And I would definitely encourage you all to check out the work of the Global Feminist AI Research Network, which has a lot of conceptual work in this area of what is a yardstick of feminist AI. Just quickly coming to the very important points Cecilia made, I agree that there is the problem in the digital space, not just the AI space, where there is a particular techno determinism and there is a techno solutionism, where you kind of like everyone kind of likes to use technology as a magic bullet. We've been in this space for a long time. First, it was ICTs for development, then it was big data for development. Now it is AI for good. Only the jargon changes, but capitalism remains the same. And in our organization, the entire idea is that we are wanting to bust the myths around speculative capital driving these false narratives of AI. At the same time, we also think that technology can make life better if used in context appropriate ways. And it's the very essence of being human to also be making and working with tech, right? And it's very ancient and not really linked to the digital. So we don't have a Luddite perspective in terms of rejecting technology, but in terms of appropriating it on our own terms and in a way where communities can shape the very design and architecture and not just be passive recipients who are just included into the tech. So there's a lot to discuss there, but thank you for bringing up the point, and I hope to learn a lot also from a future dialogue on that.
Thanks so much, Nandini. We do have a hand online. Emily, if you wanted to unmute, and then we'll collect maybe a couple more questions from our in-person group.
Thanks so much, Erica. Hiya. Nandini, thanks so much. Really interesting. And I was really struck by Cecilia's question, stepping back a little bit from the techno-determinism, techno-solutionism. And I was just took a walk this morning to do some errands, and I was really struck by, in general, people chatting to each other in the streets. We still want connection. We still want neighborliness and family. Like, at the end of the day, if you ask people, these are the things that matter, but all the crap being kind of layered on us with tech and solutions and the apps and buy it through online and are there examples of states or cities or communities where people are trying to take a more kind of collective balanced view or balanced judgment on to say, look, let's keep what tech can do for us in balance? Like, I'm just thinking from a kind of government narrative perspective, how would a government or a mayor of a city or a local community council kind of collectively remind ourselves that you know, as you were saying, tech can help us in some really helpful ways, but these essential human environmental things really matter too, and how do the two go hand in hand? I just wondered if there were, I'm hoping there's a nice answer, if there were states or progressive, I don't know, of course, you know, communities or leaders who are feminist leaders helping think that through. Thanks so much.
Okay, any other questions from the room?
Thank you. Thank you for a really nice presentation and discussion. Yeah, that has been really thought-provoking. I wanted to follow up a little bit on Cecilia's question and what you mentioned about, well, you say capitalism remains the same, but also in many ways we are seeing the development sector trying to rebrand itself, but time and time again, it remains the same. So going back to AI and without the development sector taking in the global north or us here in London, without taking the white savior approach, what do you think is the responsibility of INGOs or networks like ours in terms of how we speak up and speak out in the UK, but also internationally when we think about the well-being of the planet, women's rights organization in the global south, everything that we talked about. What is our responsibility? Where do we need to be brave, and what sacrifices might that entail, if you can call it like that? Thank you.
Cool. Any other questions from the room?
No? Okay. Just to summarize then, Emily asked for examples of governments, cities or communities taking a balanced view of what tech can do for us. And Daniela asked about the responsibility of INGOs and networks like ours when we speak up about this, and where do we need to be brave, particularly, and sacrifices need to be made. And Nandini, over to you.
So to Emily's question, I just wanted to share that there are like two wonderful communities whose work you could follow. The platform cooperativism community and the solidarity AI community, which has a global coalition of organizations of different forms, not just cooperatives, but also social enterprises, individual practitioners trying to build tech differently. And these communities are quite interesting in terms of context-based alternatives. When it comes to governments, I think that from my own country, the initiatives in the state of Kerala have been very phenomenal. Kerala is a state which is very forward-looking, and it's not just looking at a data or a digital or AI infrastructure problem, but a whole host of strategies to take its citizens into a knowledge economy future. So it's a whole of economy approach, which is not like putting the AI cart before the development vision horse, but the other way round. And that may be very interesting to follow. We also have some material where we have studied certain blueprints like Kerala's interesting digital platform backbone with future proposed data and AI functionalities to manage sustainable agriculture on top of cooperative production support across the agricultural value chain. This initiative was also recently featured by the FAO as a good practice. So a lot of learnings here. From our own work also, we have worked closely with Seva Cooperative Federation, one of the largest women's cooperatives in the world, and their experiments, grounded experiments in exploring data cooperative models from a traditional feminist approach has been very interesting. These are what come to mind, and there are quite a bit more as well, especially from the force and public technology community. In terms of the governments, the last thing I would like to say that for us, for over a decade, we have been closely looking at the Decidem Barcelona project, a municipal project of looking at building a platform data and AI infrastructure strategy for a city. And it's one of the most interesting open technology platforms for cities that we have seen. I'm sure that from the inside, there would certainly be views on its shortcomings, but from where we sit, this looks like a case of how do you do a different municipalism? At least the elements of a pragmatic approach are there. Coming to the last reflection, I shall not attempt to answer it because that's actually a question I think all of us should take home. But one thing I can say from my location at IT for Change, where we also are part of a civil society network, a network of networks called the Global Digital Justice Forum, that brings together trade unions, food security activists, public health activists, trade justice activists, and those working on people's knowledge and commons, environment, ecology, many other social movements together in order to look at what should digital governance and a future pathway for the digital economy look like differently. And we also try to make responses at periodic and just-in-time intervals to engaging with global institutional architectures and policy processes. From this location, what I can say is that one urgent issue where I don't think there are enough voices and there needs to be much more is the entire space of trade justice. We see that just one state is able to engage in particular threats and coercive strategies, which can force entire developing countries into permanent digital dependency. And civil society allies from the north must certainly speak and write more and more about why these one-sided trade agreements cannot be allowed to exist because they will deepen the hold of big tech. In terms of the sacrifices and what we may need to do, from our own reflections and debate, one quandary that we face as organization and as individuals invested in the space is we want to challenge big tech. Is there a way in our material practice we can refuse to engage with any big tech infrastructure? Is a complete big tech boycott possible? We are not able to come to a suitable answer for this question. For instance, we are on Zoom today. We are not really on a Jitsi or another alternative. In terms of collaboration, we might be on cloud and other things. We may be using public services of our own governments, which are linked to big tech platforms or are dependent on that infrastructure. So, how do we overcome that? Is there a way that we can give up maybe certain parts of social media, or what would be a consumer worker alliance that we can do where we say no to quick commerce? Many questions there, and I think you're perfectly right that all of us are complicit and all of us need to ensure we don't fall into a trap of convenience, right, over principle. And I think we need to constantly remind ourselves and get there. Yeah, it is indeed tough given the level of domination and the level of the forces we are up against.
Thank you so much, Nandini. I think we have time for one more round if anyone wanted to ask final question. Okay, I have, oh yeah, go on. Go on, Kathy. I just in the spirit of some of the tables that we had up before, I feel like we've had a lot of the rage at AI happening, and I feel a lot of that too, but I wondered in the spirit of something hopeful, if there is anything, Nandini, that you are particularly hopeful for or excited about that is happening in the space that could be meaningful for gender equality and for the kind of changes that we will hope for. Thank you so much, Kathy. I think that's a really nice one to end on. So, Nandini, do you want to answer that one and then we'll finish up?
I just want to share something from our practice in India and our linked work with organizations in India that work with adolescent girls. And we see that despite all the problems of social media, its very patriarchal messages, its architecture that is not really feminist, that social media is still able to open up some gaps and open up some possibilities. And there are ways in which sometimes choice shifts for those who are encountering other worlds and the spirit of serendipity and connection still, despite all the algorithms, so that is shrinking more and more. I think that the hope is that I'm from the generation of millennials. So I'm from a generation that really made the internet culture, as I like to look at it. I feel that there was an internet which was about peer production and serendipity and not about server farms. And it's from our own history and what we know the internet could look like that we can still recover and recover that possibility. And there are so many initiatives where you look at the space of open tech where people are making alternative social media protocols. And we know that it is because the big tech architecture at some level when no one can take it anymore, it is true that I mean things will get so bad that they will collapse and the alternatives will be mainstream one day. I really believe that. The other thing that gives me hope is if you look at the way platforms have been exploiting workers and the way in which after the pandemic and at the height of big tech power, unions across the world have been able to come back and legislations have been made possible through union action, at least to get basic social security floor. And now in the ILO, getting labor rights for platform workers. That is what has happened is very promising, which shows us the power of voices on the ground to shift things. I also think that though we do not have a global constitutionalism on how data flows should be governed or what AI should look like, the increasing public sentiment that big tech can't stay this way and it cannot stay this way, and the public debates in our countries that have been happening about a different ethical AI future, this we could see this with as a glass like at least quarter full, if not half full. And it's only, I mean, I have hope because I think hope is like a very radical act, and we only have ourselves and our solidarity to count. And solidarity has changed so many things in the world before for the good. So I don't see why this time around it will be different. And it is actually a continuing process, like we know, where power structures, I mean, they keep on reshaping and shaping again, and our solidarity politics has to keep evolving. Yeah, that's all I can think of at the moment. I hope it's hopeful.
Okay, if we want to just give another big round of applause to Nandini, thank you so much for sharing all the insights with us. And yeah, we'll definitely make sure to send around like a roundup of all the resources mentioned and the networks that Nandini mentioned as well, because I'm sure you guys are all really interested in that. But yeah, thank you so much, Nandini. Oh, you can't even see me. Thank you so much, Nandini. And yeah, we'll see you soon, hopefully. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I'll
Bye.
hand over
And
to Yamina now.
Thanks, Erica. Yeah,
bye.
we have about half an hour. We were very generous with time today, so that's lovely for some more breakout group discussion and reflection. So